Have you ever wondered why anxiety just won't budge? Like, what is it doing here anyway? Welcome to the Ease Anxiety Podcast. I'm Deanta Fuchs, a psychologist turned international anxiety coach, and I'm on a mission to share a new perspective on anxiety that puts you firmly back in control of your life, so that anxiety no longer interrupts you. So grab your cuppa, get comfy, and listen in as we demystify, destigmatize, and deconstruct what you think you know about anxiety so that you can finally do what you have struggled with for so long. Ease anxiety for good. I know you know what anxiety is. You've probably read about it, you've done some therapy, you've taken the courses, you do the breathwork. I bet you can even explain the nervous system. You understand fight or flight. You might even know all of your triggers, and yet still you spiral with anxiety. That gap between what you know and how you feel is one of the most frustrating and confusing experiences of living with anxiety, and it's also one of the most misunderstood. Because the common assumption is that if you just understand anxiety well enough, it'll stop. That idea that insight is cure and knowledge is the way through. Well, it isn't. And today I want to explain why and what actually needs to happen instead. Welcome back to the Ease Anxiety Podcast. My name is Deanta and I am your host. Now, I just want to stay personal for a small moment because this one is close to home for me too. You may or may not know that back in 2014, my husband developed health anxiety. And I want to paint you this picture of what it looked like inside our house because you probably know I'm a psychologist, right? So I had all the textbooks, I understood the mechanisms of anxiety, I knew exactly what was happening and why, and yet the poor man stayed stuck for 18 months. Because here's what was actually happening underneath all that knowledge. Every time he noticed a symptom, we would check it. Every time he was worried that he wasn't getting better, I'd reassure him. Every time he was anxious about a sensation, I was anxious about his anxiety. He was afraid of his symptoms, I was afraid of him not recovering. We were both, in our own way, generating more fear, more vigilance, more alarm. And all of it, was keeping the cycle running. Not because we weren't trying, because believe you me, we were trying really, really hard. He tried healing hurt soundtracks, exercise, medication, meditation, you name it, all of the strategies in my textbooks. It was not because we did not understand anxiety or what it was, but because understanding it is not the same as changing our relationship to it. You see, the knowledge was there, but the pattern kept going anyway. And that 18 months taught me more about the knowing-feeling gap than any textbook ever did. Because I watched it happen in real time, in my own home, with someone I love. And I couldn't think my way out of it. Not for him, not for me. What eventually helped was not more understanding of what anxiety is. It was changing what we did with the fear. We needed to stop the checking. We needed to sit with uncertainty. We needed to let the alarm settle instead of continually reacting to it. And that, my friend, is when things started to shift. So let's talk about why this happens. When you learn about anxiety, when you understand the nervous system, the threat response, the spiral, you're working with your thinking brain, the part of you that processes information, it makes meaning, it understands concepts, and that part of your brain is genuinely useful. We need it, right? And absolutely, understanding anxiety reduces shame. It helps you to recognize what's happening in real time, and it gives you a language for your experience. But here's what understanding cannot do. It cannot go back and update what your nervous system has learned. Because anxiety, that thing that keeps cycling, the kind that doesn't respond to what you know, isn't primarily a thinking problem. It's actually a learned response. You see, your nervous system, at some point, has learned that certain situations or feelings or sensations were dangerous, and then it's been responding to that learning ever since. So this is not because you're broken or damaged or you have a disorder or because you're weak or irrational, but this is just what nervous systems do. They learn and then they protect us. And then they repeat that pattern until something tells them that it's safe to do something else.
So information alone or understanding is not what's going to tell the nervous system this. And that is what I call the knowing feeling gap. And if you're experiencing this gap, you're in good company, because the vast majority of my clients will say that they have bookshelves of books about anxiety. In fact, some of them are even in the mental health field. And yet, despite all that knowledge, they were not able to change their experience of anxiety themselves. Now, that knowing feeling gap is knowing that you're safe, but not feeling safe inside. Knowing that the meeting is probably going to be fine, but your body doesn't feel that way. You know that the cancelled flight isn't a catastrophe, but your heart rate is saying something else. This gap is not a sign that you're failing at healing, okay? It is a sign that your nervous system and your thinking mind are operating on different systems entirely. So your thinking mind is updating you with new information all the time, and your nervous system is updating with new experiences. Now that distinction is what is going to make the biggest difference here, because it means that you can read every book under the sun, you can attend every free workshop, you can understand every mechanism, and your nervous system will keep running the old pattern until it has enough new experiences to learn something different. This is why so many intelligent, really self-aware, highly educated people still stay stuck in anxiety long after they feel they should have figured it out. It was never really a thinking problem. It's always been a learning problem. And the learning happens in your body, not just in your mind. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, Dee, if insight isn't enough, then what is? So this is where I want to be really careful, because I am not saying that understanding is useless. It is definitely not. In fact, it is one of the very first steps that I take with my clients inside the EASE mentorship program. In fact, E for Empower, the first step of the EASE method, is all about understanding anxiety, why it's there, and having all that insight. You see, understanding is the very first thing that reduces shame. And reducing shame matters, because shame is what is keeping the nervous system on high alert. But understanding is just the beginning of the work. It is not the end of it. What actually creates change is when that nervous system has enough repeated experiences of, I felt the fear and I was okay. I felt the activation and it passed. I didn't need to escape, avoid, or manage my way through it. I just let it move through, and I survived it. Which is why I am forever reiterating this inside my program with my clients and encouraging them not only to learn the information from a mental perspective, but to begin experiencing things that are teaching your nervous system something different. Those experiences, when they're accumulated over time, are what begin to update the pattern. And it's not because you forced yourself to feel the fear. We're not asking you to do big, scary exposures, right? We're not asking you to white knuckle through experiences, but it's because something in the way that you met the fear is different. We want to meet that fear with less resistance, less bracing, less treating the feeling itself as if it's a threat. And that, my friends, right there, that's the shift. It's not something that you can think your way into. It's something that you practice your way into. Slowly, imperfectly, and definitely with support. So hopefully this starts to make a bit of sense for you. If you've been frustrated because you've thought, hey, I know all of this, why am I still like this? Then I want you to hear something really clearly. That frustration you feel makes complete sense. The issue is that you've been applying the right kind of effort to the wrong part of the problem. Knowing more was never going to be enough. And it's not because you're beyond help. Please don't think that. But it's because the part of you that needed to change was never the part that reads the books, right? The work of actually healing anxiety is changing your relationship with your nervous system, and it's changing the relationship your nervous system has with fear. That is a very different kind of work. It's much slower, it's less about information, and it is far more about experience. It's less about understanding patterns and it's about more gently interrupting those patterns again and again until the body learns something new. Now, being able to do that, to take those steps and experience things differently, is based on having some level of insight and understanding. But we need to take the next steps. And that is what healing actually looks like. It's not a moment of insight that just changes everything. It's a gradual accumulation of experiences that you have that then tell your nervous system, hey, you don't have to brace like this anymore. If this episode has helped something click, like if it's named why the knowing just hasn't been enough, then that's exactly the starting point. Because once you understand that this was never really a thinking problem, then you can stop trying to think your way out of it. And you can start doing the kind of work that actually reaches the part of you that needs it. Now, I've linked my free anxiety solution class down below in the show notes. It's a really good place to start if you want to understand what that work actually looks like in practice. I'll see you in the next episode.
So that wraps up today's episode, and I have a huge favor to ask. If you found any value in what you heard today, please be sure to leave a review. I assure you it is not to stroke my ego, although it does help me to know that you love the show, but to help the algorithms get this episode into the hands of others who might need it. Make sure you follow the Ease Anxiety podcast so that you never miss a future episode. And lastly, I really love to connect, so find me on TikTok or Instagram and be sure to say hi. All the links are found below in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in.